Welcome everyone to Scheller Lunchtime Live, a live stream series hosted by the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business. My name is Lindsay Kane, and I'm the Associate Director of Client Relationships for non-degree executive education programs. On select Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, you'll have the chance to hear from Scheller faculty, student, and alumni speakers as they discuss relevant topics for the tech-driven digital age. At Scheller, we're proud to offer undergraduate, MBA, and PhD programs, along with open enrollment and custom executive education programs. It's my pleasure to introduce Dave Beck, a Scheller MBA alumnus and founder and managing partner of Foundry 45. Foundry 45 is an immersive technology company that develops enterprise-level virtual reality training experiences. His company has built hundreds of experiences for notable clients such as Delta Airlines, AT&T, and UPS. Today, Dave will discuss how VR technology is being used to train, reskill, and upskill the current workforce. Over to you, Dave.
All right, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. Hi, I am Dave Beck, founder and managing partner at Foundry 45. I went to Scheller a long time ago. I was actually a Tiger student in the MBA program there. And I graduated in 2005. I'm still pretty involved with the program on the leadership committee and also as a mentor for grad students. And real quick, for those of you on the call here who might not be familiar with Tiger, it stands for, it's a high dollar acronym for Technological Innovation Generating Economic Results. Got it. And it's an awesome program that combines MBA students from Georgia Tech with PhD students from Tech and law students from Emory. And we work in small teams to learn how to commercialize the PhD students' technology. And it was an awesome program. I learned a lot, and it was actually the model for the first company that I started way back in 2005. And believe it or not, we started that company on the fourth floor of Scheller in the Tiger Lab back in 2005. So my roots run pretty deep there. I am here today to talk to you about the future of learning, and my specific area of expertise is in VR training. So very quickly, overview of my company, Foundry 45, we put VR to work by creating virtual reality training experiences. We've been working in this space for a long time and have been super fortunate to work with some awesome partners like the ones that you see here on the screen today. And now that that's out of the way, let's go on and talk about kind of the macro learning environment right now. So I do want to say, sorry, this slide is a little bit of an eye chart. The rest of the presentation is mostly video and pictures, I promise. This survey came out a few days ago, though, and basically it was a large number of learning and development professionals throughout the world that were asked to give their thoughts on kind of the current state of training. And I guess what was their most important areas of focus? What were their most important areas of focus in 2021? And overall, by far the most important item was reskilling and upskilling. So why is that? Well, a lot of companies retrenched in 2020. They either reduced hiring or they had kind of a different focus from a training standpoint. And now more than ever, they're focused on getting the most out of their existing teams. So to give you one specific example, we work with a large logistics company that's moving from kind of conventional shipping facilities to more automated ones. And they have a very tenured staff of awesome people that they don't want to put aside as they go to a more automated facility. And so how do you reskill those people to actually learn to work in a different environment? Well, VR is a great way to do that. VR training, and specifically, again, is what I do. So before I get into some examples of how that's being used to give you kind of a sense of what's out there, I wanted to just spend a second to set the stage and give you the basics. So let me start off with real quick here. What is VR training? So this is a video that should help explain that.
VR training is experiencing exponential growth, and big brands like Delta, UPS, and the Weather Channel are getting on board. With VR training, you don't just read about a process or watch a video. You actually do the task. It's experiential learning, which is a more engaging, less expensive, and more efficient way to learn. It's pretty fun too. Here you see a VR training experience that teaches users how to perform maintenance on a large pump. When the user dons the headset and picks up the controllers, they are transported to an industrial space where they learn to work on the pump. It's an intuitive process, and there are step-by-step instructions to guide the user along the way. You can simulate dangerous environments without having to actually put trainees in harm's way, and overall, there are fewer distractions when you're in a headset. It's a fun and powerful way to learn. That was awesome.
Okay, and that's VR training. So, why is it so powerful? Well, we like to talk about three things. It's experiential, it's engaging, and it's efficient. So from an experiential standpoint, you're actually doing the thing that you're learning about. And if you think about it, do you learn more by reading a book about something or by actually doing it? And for me, it's definitely the latter. We also like to talk about the fact that it's engaging. So, there's kind of when was the last time somebody asked you for more training? We talk to training leaders all the time, and they say no one ever asks to be taken out of their comfort zone and given more training. But our partners see that all the time. And when you're actually in a headset, you're a lot more focused on what you're doing with fewer distractions because you're just focused on that content that's right in front of you. And it's also really efficient because it's scalable. And that's a big part of the return on investment for it too. I mean, you can deliver your training environment to anyone, anywhere around the world. So one of the ways we like to say is that you can basically bring your on-the-job training to someone who's not actually on the job. So if you wanted to train your US-based team on a new production line that's being produced in Europe before it even ships from there, done, no problem. If you want to train technicians on how to perform maintenance on a busy process line without having to actually take it out of service, no problem there as well, and on and on and on. So now that I've kind of gone through that, I want to take a minute and give some examples of how it's actually being used in industry. And then I believe we should have a decent amount of time after that for any questions. So definitely, as you have any questions or comments or think of anything that you might want to ask, please go ahead and put them in the chat. And that'll be a great opportunity for us to kind of talk through that at the end of this presentation. All right, so moving on. Right, okay, so how is VR training being used for or upskilling? Well, let me give you three specific examples. The first one here is an Atlanta-based company that I'm sure you're very familiar with, Delta Airlines. So Delta Airlines has a team of people that are called ramp workers that actually work underneath the wing of the plane. And these are the folks that are tasked with, when the plane comes into the station, they have to turn it around safely and securely, right, to get it back out as quickly as possible. They can't train on an active jetway. They can't take the plane out of service. And a lot of times they can't even get a badge for employees from the FAA for weeks after they've already started. So their solution for that is actually VR training. And now I'll go to the next slide. This is a quick video just kind of showing what the experience looks like. And basically what it is a virtual reality plane inspection. So learners get to do things like find and remove debris from the tarmac. They inspect the plane for damage, things like that. They make sure the towing mechanism is operating properly. It's all randomized. And then at the end, the trainee receives a score for their performance that can be tracked in Delta's existing training infrastructure. They put thousands of employees through it, and they've had great results. Employee satisfaction's up, cost on travel is down, and the performance is improved. So that's an example of how they're actually using it for an inspection experience. And then let me give you another example here from another company that's a big brand here in Atlanta. This is UPS. So UPS has a process that they call sorting, right? You get all these packages that come through the facility, and they have to decide, do they go here, there, or the other? A lot of that's automated, but some of the process is in fact done by sorters. And so to give you an example of kind of what it looks like, here's a training experience that we put together for them that helps people on a singulator, which is a really cool machine that will literally take boxes of all different sizes and in different places and line them up in a single line. It's amazing. And sometimes they get packages that are too big for a certain type of sorting, or they get ones that are incompatible, or there's on the left side of the screen there, it's probably a little small, but there's an open box, or there's one that has a label that's been damaged in shipping or something. So they have to actually take those off and make sure that they go to the right place. So in a busy facility, they might actually put 100,000 packages through that place in an hour, which is mind-boggling to think about that. So for them to be able to, they can't just shut a line down or practice on a line with all these packages coming through. So how do they train somebody on an operation that is in fact constantly ongoing 24/7? Well, a great way to do it is to actually do it with virtual reality training. And it's the type of thing that if you're upskilling somebody who's been doing a different type of experience to work in a different type of facility, it's a great use case. And a lot of people within, it's a huge building. There's all sorts of different people that are actually doing this. So it's interesting to know what's possible by training in VR. And yeah, I'm just looking at the chat here. There's some great comments that look like they're coming in. So I'll address those here in a few minutes as we get to the end. But definitely, please continue to ask anything that you might want to for the last half of our talk. Okay, then the last example that I have here is actually with the Weather Channel. So this is a little bit different. This is more of a gamified experience where they wanted to be able to train their internal teams on all of the new features that were in their new mobile app. This came out about a year ago. And when we were talking about setting it up, the first half is all kind of instructional about how do you learn, like, well, what are the main points about this new app, right? And then the second half is kind of a gamified piece that just gives them a fun thing to do that actually would make them want to go through this more often. And that piece of it, gamification, is a huge way to get people more interested and involved. And what was interesting when we were talking about this initially, yeah, you get to be a force of nature here. You get to actually control the weather as you're going through it and as you're learning. So that was another way to kind of make it more engaging. And when we were talking to the team there, we said, so you want to, eat your vegetables before you have your dessert. And the head of marketing actually said, no, we would like you to use this to make your vegetables taste like dessert, which I thought was kind of an interesting outlook on it. So basically the way that the experience works is you physically go through doing the things on the app that you need to know about. And then at the end, and I'll just kind of fast forward a little bit here, but you get to actually, one of the things that happens in the experience that you're learning about in the initial part is you have to set alerts. Well, then an alert comes that there's a snowstorm and you have to deal with that by, doing something fun and throwing fireballs at it, which surprisingly ended up being one of the most popular things that they had actually experienced when it turned into a big game with all of the muckety mucks and the higher ups that were, competing with different departments versus each other. So it was a lot of fun. And that's just another way that you can make an experience more engaging and more fun. And that's really kind of the formal part of what I wanted to go through here. And then, was just looking to open it up for the balance of our time together here to answer any questions that you guys have that have been put into the comment section. And one thing that I will say before I leave the kind of formal part of the presentation is that I am very active still in the Georgia Tech community and in the technology community in general. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Definitely, please feel free to reach out to me there. My contact information is actually on this slide as well. If there's anything that I can do from the standpoint of, kind of talking about what's happening in learning and development and training, and specifically if you're interested in immersive technologies, always happy to geek out on that when I have an opportunity.
Very cool. Thanks so much. So lots of really great questions coming through the chat. And so maybe we'll start with this one. How can small businesses with smaller budgets take advantage of the benefits of VR training for their employees?
That's a great question. We are actually very focused right now. So Foundry 45, we do hard skills virtual reality training. So the tagline on our website is actually, when there's one right way to do things. And the good thing about that is we often follow standard operating procedures for what we're doing there. We like things that go from A to B to C to D. And the good news about that for small businesses and smaller budgets is that those types of experiences are actually way more cost effective. And the reason why we focus on them as much as we do is because we are able to show, it's easier to show an ROI with something when you know that you're getting the right answer or not. And so because we're focused in that area, that's a lot less expensive to put together than someone who wants to do a simulation of some sort of huge open world type environment where it's like Grand Theft Auto or something. You can do anything you want within the world. Those are very big, very complicated, very, very expensive, really, experiences. Our focus is more on the ones that are more budget friendly.
Awesome, thank you. And another really great question from a professor in visual media, and I think this will apply to students out there listening as well. But how can they train students to be effective creators for AR, VR? What software, and how do you prepare them to apply for jobs with a company like yours?
Yeah. Well, I will say, for anyone who is in the general Atlanta ecosystem, and I focus on that a little bit because this is through Scheller, we are very lucky to have an amazing ecosystem here in the area. I'm a product of Tech Square and everything that's happening from the Georgia Tech ecosystem around there. But there's also amazing things happening at SCAD, at GSU. Our offices are actually located in a creative media industries institute that's actually downtown in the GSU area. KSU has great programs as well. And even further out, places like North Georgia are really getting focused on educating people in this type of kind of new immersive technology. There's a huge overlap in the type of person that goes into game design and gaming and the type of person that is good at developing virtual reality, whether that's for training or for gaming or anything. And oftentimes what we see is that at least half of our development team is probably developing a game on their own on the side that's just amazing. We get to see some really cool stuff. But from a learning standpoint, if you're into the more kind of technical realm, the hardcore kind of development side of things is typically going to be done in either Unity or Unreal Engine. Those are the two main game engines that are used. And if you really want to be a good developer on that front, you would also ideally be versed in the programming language C#. Now, that said, you can use Unity, in the same way that you might be able to use Photoshop in some form or fashion without necessarily having a coding background. It's not as you can't do as much from that standpoint, but you can. And then separate from that, we need sales and marketing. We need storyboarding. We need design. We have analysts that we actually, we have a role that we call the understander. And typically it's going to be someone who's technical. We have actually hired people that were technical writers for that job. Because literally they're people who like to get in and figure out how stuff works, because they're the ones who will actually look at a procedure and decide this is how we're going to realize that in the virtual environment. So, and a little bit of technology background kind of helps with that, but that's not the main thing necessarily.
Very cool. So in addition to VR being used as a training tool, how do you see it being used in marketing per se in the future?
Well, so we actually, when we first started the company, we did a lot of work in VR marketing. It's from an experiential standpoint. There's a lot of experiential marketing where you can show off one of the really easy kind of ROI examples is a company like John Deere or Caterpillar that has a giant piece of equipment that is extremely expensive to take to an event. We've actually found out from working with some of them that if they have an event in Asia, for example, where they need to bring equipment, then pretty much they make sure that they can sell it to somebody in country so that they don't have to actually ship it back after the event. So that's extremely expensive. And you also can't necessarily drive the piece of equipment around, for example. So what if instead you can bring a 1 pound or less headset with you and a couple controllers and give somebody the experience of what it's like to be in that Iowa cornfield or something, as opposed to, like, again, you can it's like a teleportation device, right? You can literally teleport them to any environment that you would want them to be in while you're telling them about whatever value props you're wanting to get across as part of the experience.
That's cool. I've never thought about heavy machinery, and that's very interesting. So I guess kind of taking it back to basics, maybe, how long does it take to create a VR training? Obviously you meet with clients, and then where does it go from there?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty well-worn path for our process where, yeah, there's some upfront piece that we're going to do as part of engagement, just to understand what somebody's business is before we put together a statement of work or anything. But let's take that kind of sales process and understand getting to know you process out of the way. When we actually start a project with someone, there's 3 phases typically. There's kind of the intake, there's the agile development, and then there's initial implementation. And so that can take anywhere from a couple of months for a small project to we've had client partners we've worked with for years. So on the intake side, you have to understand what it is. Send us your standard operating procedures, send us your training videos, and our understander will actually take that and put it into what we call a flow doc, which is essentially, it's like a VR training storyboard. And it says if there's 100 steps, here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they'll do the whole thing. They'll say, okay, here's what the step is. Here's what it looks like in VR. Is there a pointer? Are you picking something up? What color is it? Is there voiceover? If so, what's the voiceover copy? Are there graphics on the screen? What does it say? And then once they've done that, they'll ship that back to the subject matter expert on the other side who says, yeah, that looks right, except for, step 6 is step 7, or that's red, it should be green. But once we have that, that's the plan. And then we do an agile development process where VR is a new technology. So if I just tell you what you're going to get, but you don't actually see it as we're doing it, it's possible that I'll develop one thing, but you're expecting something else, right? So what we do is we do in either 1 or 2 week sprints where we give you content every 2 weeks. And that's not just us. I mean, I think other groups would do that as well. Agile is a pretty well-worn path these days for development. But basically, you get to see what you're getting every week or two. And that way, if you get off by a little bit, that's not a problem to get back. But if you get off by a whole bunch, then, it's better not to get there. And then finally, we encourage everyone to at least do a pilot implementation for anything that they build, because if you don't get it in front of the people that are actually using it, then you won't know. You don't know what you don't know. It's just like any sort of software as far as that's concerned.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much, Dave. I think there's really great chatter going on in the comments. Folks are feeding off of each other. So really great. We appreciate your time. Our next Scheller Lunchtime Live session is Friday, February 26th at 12 p.m. Eastern. The topic is the role of social media in financial markets, featuring Professor Robbie Moon. Robbie will discuss what research says about the credibility of investors on social media, how firms appear to be using social media, and the potential disruption to traditional sources of financial information. You can register for this event and learn more about future Scheller Lunchtime Live sessions by following the Georgia Tech Scheller College of Business on LinkedIn. A recording of this session and future sessions will be available on our LinkedIn and YouTube pages as well. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you again, Dave.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Be well.